welcome back to another episode of Just Julie. I have a really special guest from abroad, Elisaveta, and she is here to share her story, her journey with what it was like growing up with narcissistic parents and how she's worked to overcome some of those issues from having to go through that. Elisa, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, sure. So my name is Elisaveta, Elisa for short, as she already mentioned. I'm a life coach and mentor and energy healer, and I'm doing this work through just 3 to 4 years now after experiencing narcissistic abuse from my family.
So when I looked up narcissist, I knew what a narcissist was, but I didn't know what narcissistic abuse in parents were. And the way it's defined is somebody who lives through or possessive of or engages in marginalizing competition with their offspring. And in talking to you, you had some of that happen between you and your brother, correct? So tell us a little bit about what were some of the things that you noticed and when you started noticing them?
Yeah, narcissistic abuse is mostly coming abuse from the narcissist itself, and they can really be lots of types. It can be like financial abuse, physical abuse, emotional, mental, psychological. So it has like the whole spectrum.
Okay.
And yeah, and the abuse like I experienced, it wasn't starting, from my sibling. It started from my mother. My mother was a narcissist.
Right. So she was the narcissist. Did you notice? I know there were a couple moments when you spoke to me about your childhood that you really picked up on it, but if I remember correctly, you really didn't connect the dots until later when you got older and were ready to go off to college. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, because when I grew up, I used to be like this perfect child because as children, we just, our main wish is to fit in, to, receive love and validation from our parents, not only from society and just other social circles. So at first, I didn't notice it because I just thought this behavior was normal,
Yeah.
right? And my mother also had this thing of isolating me from people and just choosing the friends or the people that I was allowed to hang out with. And these people obviously were mostly the daughters and sons of her friends. So these children had the same rules or similar rules as my childhood. So I didn't know anything. And some of the signs that are very subtle with narcissistic abuse, it's just this manipulation. I would say also this hot and cold behavior. Like, especially as a parent, this is very toxic. When a parent, for example, they just start being nice and kind, especially outside of the family household. They pretend to be this really kind and nice, caring parent, but then in the household, it's just the whole different story. They just turn into this monster. They're really strict, really harsh on you with so much criticism. I remember my mother being very authoritarian. So these are just signs of just narcissism in parents. And also, it just felt like always it was a competition. So yeah.
Did you think that it was just part of your culture growing up, and you just assumed that was the normal way, to be brought up?
Yeah, I feel especially because I grew up in a mixture of both cultures. My father was he is born he's from Spain, from the western side, and my mother comes from the Eastern European side, like more traditional values in a way. So I really believe that in Eastern Europe, for example, especially, and Asia, where mental health is not very spread and not People are not very aware of it. It just, this abuse can just come hidden as tradition or culture, and just people just think it's normal.
So I know one of the things that you shared with me was that there was a lot of manipulation. And if you didn't do what she thought that you wanted to do or live up to her expectations, she would favor your brother more and give him more positive attention and criticize you. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And the most hurtful thing was that it wasn't always this way, because I started being the golden child, which is basically the favorite child of the family. So then when the dynamics changed, with basically happened when I started to question everything. I started to question all the techniques, the mechanisms, what was going on in my family. So then the roles switched, and my brother, which by now was he was living in my shadow, then he turned to be the golden child, the favorite child. And this caused like friction in our relationship, and this was one of the techniques that the narcissist, especially the narcissist parent, uses with the siblings, is to just the old strategy, divide and conquer.
Did your dad notice anything within the household if there was an abnormal behavior with your mom towards you and towards your brother? Did he notice anything? Because I know that, you know, when you look back, you can kind of connect the dots, but then when you're going through it, you don't know that somebody's struggling with these types of disorders.
Yeah, my father especially, he knew that there was something going on. He knew that, we needed help basically. We had to go to therapy. And I did went to a psychologist. But it just came to a point where at first he agreed, but then he just, as a flying monkey, as an enable of a narcissist, basically, these people just allow the narcissistic behaviors and they support them. So what he did, he knew what was happening, but he just justified this behavior as part of, the Russian culture, the Soviet culture,
Right,
like this authoritarian mothers. And
right.
then when, yeah, as years passed, he just stopped just listening to me and trying to, have another perspective, and just allowed her to do anything, basically supporting her fully.
So, what does growing up in a household like that do for you, as far as becoming who you're trying to be and your self esteem? What did that do to you?
I would say it's hell. It's just basically hell. It weighs a ton on your self-esteem, on your mental health. It feels like you're basically dying every day, like you're slowly dying. It's not like a sudden death, but your energy is being sucked out of you. Um, you have like lots of harsh comments that they just throw at you, and they think, because narcissists just, they are so convinced that they are always right, so they think they are actually doing something right for you, but in reality just doing the opposite effect. And the worst thing is that they are not aware of this, and they don't even want to be aware or change. So
Do
yeah,
you
it feels like your energy just being out every time.
do you think that she grew up in a household where it was just a pattern that just passed down from her to you? Um, do you know anything about her background?
Yeah, I'm aware. In fact, I've been to some quantum healing sessions, and I connected to the Akashic Records, which is basically like kind of the cosmic library, and allows us to get more insights into the life of the person. And I just wanted to understand what was going on. And I just had this intuitive insight that this was generational, and in fact, narcissism is generational, is part of the generational trauma.
Gotcha.
So what I got in this healing session was that basically my mother grew up in an environment where being feminine, being a woman, was not allowed, was seen as a sign of weakness. So just being here all the time, not allowing to process her emotions, I believe that it just made her who she was,
That's
without love, without empathy, without anything.
That's really interesting because, when people in different cultures, you grow up and they want you to take the role that you identify as. Like if you're a woman, you're very feminine, you're very submissive. You take on those traditional roles. So that's really interesting to hear that she kind of hid the emotions and everything just to try to just to try to live up to that standard.
Yeah, it is. And as a society, I think that both in the Eastern approach and the Western, I think that we really have to understand that being a woman is not just being, submissive and weak and just being a people pleaser. Being a woman is much more. And one of the things is just speaking our voice and being confident in who we are.
So, can you give me some specific examples of what you realize were narcissistic abuse from her? And then, was there any other type of abuse? Was it verbal or physical? Anything else that you feel comfortable sharing with us?
Sure. And at first, I would like to go, surface level, like to put on the general traits of narcissism, which was basically as a daughter, when I tried to connect with her and to, use empathy for what she experienced and what I experienced as well, and just make a connection to and connect emotionally more. What I found was that she usually took this as a threat, as some competition, and she just usually gave me the silent treatment or dismissed my emotions or just shut me down and just never really paid attention to me.
Right. What do you think the
Yeah.
competition was in her mind between you and her?
Well, many times, and this has been confirmed that this is a sign of it's a narcissistic trait in mothers and then the daughters, the empath daughters. It's basically that they want their daughters to be an extension of themselves. They don't see their
Uh,
children. A narcissist doesn't see the children as an adult, another human being, an autonomous human being. They see their children as an extension of themselves, of something that they just literally copy and paste.
mhm.
So when I was growing up, it was just she saw that I was I was developing myself, I was learning things, and then of course the physical qualities. And I really believe that she saw that as a competition, and yeah.
So that's surface level. In I mean, what are some things that stood out in your mind that happened that you can kind of share with us between you and her? I know there's a lack of empathy, and you didn't have that emotional connection like most mothers have with their children. Um, the self esteem issues. But what are some of the things specifically that you can recall that stick in your mind of things that you experienced with her?
Yeah, well, we went to the surface level things, which is basically empathy or competition, saying children as competition, but some several signs that are deeper down the iceberg, let's call it like that. I remember there was lots of verbal abuse, and many times it was just hitting as gaslighting, which is just the manipulation tactic of the narcissist of making you doubt your reality. So let's
Mm.
say an example for you to understand. Let's say that they tell you you are really beautiful. You don't need so much makeup on you. You know it looks really bad. So they are
Oh, yeah.
hiding. They say they put a compliment and they are hiding with the insult and the verbal abuse.
Okay, I gotcha. I didn't realize though that that was a trait or a characteristic of it, because there, now that you've said that, I can pick up in my brain a couple of a couple of examples that I've had with people that they've said something along those same lines. So that's really interesting. Um, how did you like come to realize that this was something that was really not normal? It wasn't just all in your head.
Well, at first I really doubted, and I just was convincing myself that this was normal because I was isolated. I wasn't really allowed to make friends or connections outside of the household on my own. But then it started really in university when I just started to make more friends and other people different to what my mother had for me. And then I started doing lots of research on Google. I started also questioning them. I started to ask them questions. Hey, is this normal? Do your parents do this as well? And then with the internet and my friends, I just realized that this wasn't normal at all.
So did you ever confront her? I know you guys went to therapy and stuff. Did she really know how her behavior had an impact, her disorder had an impact on you growing up and shaping you into the person that you are?
I did confront her, yes, and we went to therapy. But first, on the therapy side, first it was like kind of on my own thing. Like I was here because they thought that there was something wrong with me, when in reality it was just the normal thing, normal PTSD symptoms, anxiety, panic attacks.
Yeah.
But then the psychologist just suggested to for my parents to take some tests, and this is where my mother just got triggered. This is what I assume, and this is what probably happened because my father also kind of confirmed it later on. But she was triggered. She didn't want to admit that there was something wrong with her and she needed to heal. So we basically stopped going.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So how did this all end? Like, what's your relationship with her now? Do you have any children?
Well, I don't have any children yet. I do
Yeah.
plan to be a mother someday, but this requires, of course, lots of effort and inner work, which I'm taking right now. I do have an amazing partner, which I love so much. And our relationship, I would say it's to the minimal, like it's minimal contact. I still talk sometimes with my brother and father, but yeah, it's almost no contact because I don't really consider this to be necessary when she showed me many times when I told her that there was something that she had to change within herself in her generation, intergenerational patterns basically, and she didn't want to. She always ended up blaming myself. So I just took the decision to do this step.
So, what are some things that you teach your clients as a victim of this that you've worked through? One, what are some things that you've worked through, and how do you help people to identify and work through similar situations that they're in that they may not know that they're in?
Well, one of the things that I really consider super important after enduring and surviving narcissistic abuse is your self love, because this is very common both with narcissists and survivors. They both lack self love.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is how they project and how they'll deal with it. Narcissists don't deal with this in any way, they just project their issues. But survivors, they actually acknowledge that they have a low self esteem, and when they seek help, this is what we focus on firstly, self love, because many times what I usually see in many clients is lots of shame, lots of guilt, which are just project emotions that the narcissist told them to believe. So this is one of the patterns, and I mostly focus on this self love, and in all levels, body, mind, and spirit.
And so, the clients that you have that come to you, Tell us a little bit about your business, and tell us about how you help them work through similar situations that you've gone through. The good news is that you can relate to them, that you've gone through it, so you can understand their perspective. But what are some things that you do to work with them? I know you said you do some energy healing. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So what I really consider necessary, in the mental health field, especially most therapists are not very trauma informed, and even if they are not informed like in the narcissistic abuse level. They just have the narcissism as a personality disorder, and that's it. They don't really know how complex PTSD works in a survivor, especially from this type of abuse. So being a coach and mentor for this really, and actually being also a survivor, really helps me to relate to them and how to apply same techniques or similar ones that I use on my own journey to them. And I use what I really like is to apply every unique perspective, every unique approach to each one of them because each person is different. You can just do the same with all of them.
Mhm.
So, what I usually work with is psychology, what I learned in my trainings and certifications. I have a wide variety of techniques to self-regulate the nervous system. This is more on a mental and somatic level
Mhm.
to bring calmness and peacefulness to the body. And then on an emotional and energetic level, this is where we actually remove blockages, remove emotional limiting beliefs. I also do quantum healing, Reiki. This is more on an energetic level, which is just applying, love and understanding and transmuting the energies, the stored blocked energies from the past into the present.
Okay. Um, I know that, in my journey of working through some of the traumas that I've had growing up, I've worked with some energy healers, and it's a pretty interesting way of therapy. And I know for me personally, it's helped me unblock some things that I felt kind of stuck with, and I felt like I was holding on to. And so that's really interesting that you're able to use all those different dynamics. So if somebody is watching this show, right, and they think that they are a victim, or they want to connect with you and get some life coaching from you, how would they do that?
Yeah, well, I'm usually present in most social media. I'm on Instagram as my full name, Elisaveta.sk. And then I'm also on YouTube with the same name. I have a website where you can check all my services, all that I'm offering with some free gifts as well. And then I would also like to add that I have a private group where I just bring more support to survivors. So I have two options. You can either join my group with the program when there's lots of help, you have the whole package where you can heal, or you can have private mentorship and therapy and coaching with me.
So for the viewers that are watching, before we close, what do you want to say to them?
I would say the most important thing I would tell, like any survivor, the most important thing I would tell to myself as well, to my inner child, and I want to tell everyone here, is that it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault that these people projected their issues into you. And it's not your responsibility to fix them. They have their own trauma, they have their own story. They are not going to change. I just tell you that. So don't focus on them. Focus on yourself. Focus on healing your inner child and reclaiming your self love that it was always there with you.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I really, enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate you opening up to us about your personal experience. And I'm excited to see you as you help others not go through what you did, and try to break the pattern, try to break the patterns in the generational household. So I appreciate it so much. And thank you again. And I wish you the best of luck in everything you do.
Thank you so much too. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And that's it for this episode. I hope you'll tune in next week for a new episode for Just Julie. Again, I'm Julie Ramirez, and I can't wait to see you guys next week. Thank you.